Rebirth of a Movie Star. Author, J11, 22, 33. Chapter 6-10. Chapter 6. On this day, Lang arrived 5 minutes before the scheduled time to Uni's rented filming set. The reason was Hong Hong's speedy driving as well as Cho Jin's silver SUV. Today, before he went out, Cho Chien made a phone call. A mere few minutes later, the all-dressed in black Hong Hong appeared inside the apartment. Cho Chien simply threw the car keys at him and said, "From now on you'll be going with Lang," and everything seemed to be settled. At that time, Hong Hong exposed a slightly unusual expression that made Lang regret his words. The reason Lang chose Hong Hong was because of his silent ways. He didn't appear friendly, but unexpectedly he had good attention to detail and was able to resolve things efficiently. He was a completely different style to Xi Haiyang. However, Lang had never thought that Hong Hong was originally Cho Jin's assistant. In his previous life, the assistant who had always appeared by Cho Jin's side was not Hong Hong. But of course, anyone who could remain by Cho Jin's side was definitely good. That wasn't worth mentioning. It turns out that in his previous life, Cho Chien had even helped him in this manner. Lang couldn't help looking over Cho Chien. His heart felt complicated. Of course, he might be thinking too much. Perhaps Hong Hong just by coincidence made some mistake, was kicked out by Cho Chien, and so Lang just happened to collect a bargain. However, from the fact that Hong Hong didn't have any angry or frustrated actions when being sent to him, Lang felt that his first conjecture was more likely to be correct. However, no matter what reason Hong Hong had been sent to him in his previous life, right now he had this kind of low status. Perhaps he had prevented Hong Hong's development by taking him from Cho Jin's side. Although it made him look flighty, Lang forced himself to speak again. "I didn't know Brother Hong was Brother Joe's person. It's only that I heard someone speak about him before. Since it's like this, then I won't use him. Anyone else will also be okay?" This time Lang didn't dare to name any names. Cho Jin's gaze swept over Lang like a knife. He laughed lowly. "What's there to be polite about? Since you opened your mouth, how do I dare not agree? Come here." Lang also knew it was too late. He could only walk over. "Thank you, Brother Cho." Cho Chien wrapped his arms around Lang's waist. He gave him a kiss that had the flavor of egg pancakes right in front of Hong Hong. After kissing, Cho Chien openly rubbed Lang's butt. After rubbing, he said in an intimate manner, "There's no need to thank me. After you finish working today, let Hong bring you back on." "Okay," Lang nodded. This luxury apartment, which didn't have any signs of life, most likely wasn't Cho Jin's fixed residence. If Lang moved into this place, then it seemed as though Cho Chien intended to have him completely realize the entire meaning of being a kept lover. This kind of feeling became stronger as Lang passed Hong Hong, whose eyes were downcast, not giving any sign of his opinion. Lang couldn't help but remember the first time in his previous life when the photographs of him exiting a gay bar were posted onto the internet. At that time, Hong Hong came rushing over to question him with a heavy face. At that time, Lang had foolishly chosen to hide his plans from the people around him, and so of course he didn't dare admit it to Hong Hong. It was only that in Hong Hong's angry reaction that Lang was able to feel a sliver of his friendship and regard. In this life, everything should be different. Lang sat in the back of the spacious car and looked at the back of Hong Hong's head as he was driving. He was thinking silently. Perhaps Cho Jin's actions to expose things was for this reason. He wanted to let Lang what he had sacrificed, all for money. In the end, it was still a form of playing with him, wasn't it? Lang laughed helplessly. It turns out he still had some entertainment use in this regard. Uni's clothing endorsement deal was signed 2 weeks ago. The reason was because they regarded Lang's image and partners, which was down to earth and also cool and clean. It was suitable for Uni's image. Their clothing had a simple design but was also stylish and comfortable. If the actors was suitably matched, then the CP value of Uni's clothing advertisement was very high. It would become very well received by fashionable young people and became a popular product. It's only that in his previous life, that not long after Lang filmed Uni's endorsement advertisement, the news of Li's death was leaked. Of course, all of Lang's scenes were changed out, and he had also received a letter from a lawyer asking for damages. Thinking about the things in his life which really taught Lang the hardships of his profession, then Uni can be considered one of those things. In terms of business, there was nothing that he could complain about. But the unfortunate events of his previous life made Lang's memory of this filming somewhat vague. It was not until he entered the waiting room and raised his head to see the person there, that Lang suddenly remembered everything. There was a coldly handsome young person sitting there who was at this moment flipping through some documents in his hands. When he saw Bai Lang, he also didn't rise. He only nodded and made a cool greeting. "Hello. I'll be in your care today." Bai Lang also replied, "I'll be in your care today." However, his face changed slightly. Rong Siki, 19 years old. They were both artists from Total Entertainment. However, Rong Siki was different from Bai Lang, who was going down the actor's path. Rong Siki was pursuing the path of becoming a singer. The two people didn't have any contact, including in his previous life. Compared to Bai Lang, who can be considered a small transparent star picked up by the roadside, Rong Siki was Total Entertainment's heavily invested protege. He had won the Golden Coil for Best Newcomer. For singers, they could only be considered for this award on the year of their debut. Once they missed it, they would not have another chance in their lifetime. For the singer who won it, they would be highly admired and envied by their peers. Of course, Bai Lang also knew that 10 years later, Rong Siki would win countless more awards. In the future 10 years, half of the singing world can be considered Rong Siki's territory. Other than having a unique voice, the young singer was also a musical genius. He had written many unforgettable love songs. To Bai Lang, he considered this a prime example of someone with true genius entering the correct position and career. It was just that although Rong Siki was an expert when it came to music, in other aspects he was often under attack, especially in regards to filming activities. Rong Siki had an expression that was always cold and quiet. He was also pointed out as having a wooden face that never changed. So once Bai Lang remembered, he knew that later when shooting began, this would definitely be apparent. This was fine, but what Bai Lang's face changed was that he had remembered that in his previous life that the person they had found to replace Rong Siki last minute was none other than Kang Jian. Speaking of Kang Jian, Yooni's film shoot was not the first time the two of them had met. Some time ago, during the early days of filming Partners for Life, Bai Lang had been sent to a training program last minute. Kang Jian had also been present there. At that time, Kang Jian was an artist from Grand Media Group and was also a recently signed newcomer. Most of the people who had come to participate in this training program came from this kind of background. Bai Lang's progress can be considered slow. Compared to this bunch of 17 and 18-year-old young people, the 22-year-old Bai Lang had already graduated from university. He was one of the oldest in the group and a couple of times was mocked by the others. However, Bai Lang was one of the earliest success stories of this group. Not long after the training, Bai Lang became famous because of Partners. The students from the same training program who had relatively friendly relationships with him would sometimes call him for the purposes of networking. Kang Jian was one of the men. He was the earliest one to make contact. When Bai Lang thought back, when Kang Jian first started calling him often, it was right after Partners for Life first started filming. Perhaps it was because the first male lead of Partners for Life was Wu Shenon, who was also an artist of Grand Media. Wu Shenon can be considered Kang Jian's senior brother. However, his temper was very big and was proud and arrogant. He wasn't well liked by his younger brothers in the company, and on set he was always making enemies. In these times, Bai Lang and Kang Jian had Wu Shenon as a common topic of discussion, and they very quickly became close. Thus, Bai Lang had always treated Kang Jian as a friend that he had made before he became famous and treasured him greatly. If he was given an opportunity, he would always pull up Kang Jian to the best of his ability. Bai Lang had never hesitated. In his previous life, during Yooni's endorsement, when Rong Siki's wooden acting brought up discussions whether or not he should be changed, Bai Lang was the one who had spread the news to Kang Jian. Afterwards, as for what methods Kang Jian had used to win this opportunity, Bai Lang wasn't sure. At that time, Bai Lang was still overly naive and never thought about the fact that to change someone to another person required a lot of behind-the-scenes power and effort. And so he carelessly overlooked the fact that Kang Jian was not as simple and as straightforward as he appeared on the surface. But this time, he wouldn't make the same mistake. Bai Lang looked at himself in the mirror after his makeup had been completed and repeated this to himself several times. Filming Yooni's advertisement at the end of August was for the purposes of promoting its new winter line, down jackets and pullover sweaters. The concept of the advertisement was very simple. Two young people who had very different types of living in the city. One was bright and sunny, the other was quiet and reserved. And both of them, when wearing Yooni's clothing on their bodies, showed that it was extremely suitable as well as expressed its various uniqueness. This kind of contrast also showed the various different ways the clothing and accessories could be mixed and matched to fit one's personal style. Yooni had used this method of advertisement for many seasons already. Right now there wasn't any girls in the ad, as the female line would be shot separately. There would be two separate shoots, one for print advertisement and a short clip for TV. Today Bai Lang and the others were on set to shoot some concept materials to check for the feel and effect. Then after adjustment, the real shoots could begin. When Bai Lang put on the cream pullover sweater as well as the faded blue jeans, he looked just like a student who had just finished school. When he walked towards the film set, inside the snowy set Rong Siki was already standing. He was to start first. Thus Bai Lang stopped some distance away and carefully observed Rong Siki's performance. This time the primary reason Uni had picked Rong Siki to endorse its products was because of Rong Siki's winning of the Golden Coil as Best Newcomer Award and the fame associated. This was very suitable for Uni's image, which was young and modern. Also Rong Siki was a singer who was becoming very famous. He had long thick eyelashes and deep eyes, as well as a high nose bridge. His face had very beautiful angles, and when he frowned, there was a deep feeling that belied his young age. So that he would contrast with Bai Lang, the clothing he was wearing was purple and gray, and gave him a more dark air. However, in reality, with Rong Siki's qualities, when wearing Uni's sweaters it was easy for it to look too plain and ordinary. The reason was, although Rong Siki's features were indeed handsome, however the 19-year-old him was still in his developing stage, and the soft, shapeless sweater really required some body shape in order to hold it up. And if the clothing wasn't worn properly, then no amount of editing after could change it. So unexpectedly the photographer from the very beginning was not very satisfied. He kept changing Rong Siki's posture over and over again, and in Bai Lang's eyes he seemed very forced. Rong Siki was cooperative throughout and he didn't complain. As newcomer who was extremely well looked upon, his professional attitude was very good. This was also the impression that Rong Siki would give in the following 10 years. His private life was very secretive. There was almost no news about him. All of his focus was placed on his music. The fact that an artist could have such a clean and pure image showed that Total Entertainment placed considerable effort and care towards him. Bai Lang knew that the photographer would, at the end of the day, after Rong Siki had tried all three of his designated outfits, express his opinion that Rong Siki's shoot had problems. The atmosphere in the room was becoming more and more heavy. Bai Lang had no choice but to think about the fact that if things progressed in the same way as his previous life, if he would be able to prevent Kang Jian from becoming the replacement. That's right, to prevent Kang Jian. In this life, Bai Lang would not actively seek to harm him, but he would definitely prevent Kang Jian from progressing on his path. Bai Lang knew that for the Kang Jian who dreamed about being above others, this would be the most intolerable thing. Since in this lifetime Kang Jian had not betrayed him, then he wouldn't give him an opportunity to do so again. However, without Kang Jian's betrayal, he would also not have had this life's rebirth. In the cycle of life there were many whys and wherefores that could not be explained. Bai Lang could only try his best. The rest was up to fate. This time Bai Lang definitely would not give Kang Jian any news. However, when Kang Jian managed to grab the opportunity last time, it showed he had other methods. Even if he didn't say it, Kang Jian may still be able to find a way to become Rong Siki's replacement in a different manner. Because to Kang Jian, filming this advertisement can be considered an important first step for him. Thinking about the time, this should be around the time when Kang Jian had filmed his first movie A Confused to count as the second male lead. His scenes weren't many, but his role was well received. After the movie was screened, Uni's large-scale advertisement also came out at the same time, which pushed Kang Jian's fame up and achieved a heightened promotional effect for him. So preventing today can be considered breaking off one of Kang Jian's wings just as he wanted to fly. But how to prevent it? Bai Lang frowned, deep in thought. At this time, Bai Lang saw two people walk by his side. When he turned his head, Bai Lang discovered a familiar person, or more accurately someone that would become familiar to him in the coming years. Chapter 7. Fang Hua, who was at present Rong Siki's manager, was one of Total Entertainment's most powerful managers. She can be considered an elder of Total Entertainment. When Total Entertainment was founded, she was one of the first people they had dug over. Other than her, there were two other famous and resource-filled managers, Qi Ming and Li Wangdi. It was them that helped Total Entertainment expand and lay down its roots. Right now Fang Hua had also been promoted to Total Entertainment's vice president, and was considered a small boss under Big Boss Cho. In his past life, Bai Lang never had this kind of opportunity in the beginning to get close with this kind of high-ranking company employee. When doing his contractual activities, he was simply given the next manager in line. It wasn't until the incident with the yacht filming that Bai Lang had the chance to encounter Fang Hua. After all, that yacht really belonged to the Cho family's businesses. That day it was Cho Jin's birthday party. Seeing that he still owed Cho Qian so much money, Bai Lang had consented to attend. In the events that followed after, During the crucial time, Fang Hua actually didn't help him much. However, Bai Lang had come to know her during this time. She had her customary efficient short hair and pantsuit. Her features were very handsome. Perhaps because of this reason, Fang Hua always liked to wear very red lipstick. In her earlobes shone shiny earrings. It was impossible to mistake her for anyone else. She appeared together with Hong Hong by Bai Lang's side. Fang Hua saw Bai Lang turn around and made a generous greeting. "Mr. Bai, nice to meet you for the first time. My name is Fang Hua." After speaking, she reached out her hand and shook hands with Bai Lang. Bai Lang was also very polite. "Vice President, I've admired you for a long time. Thank you for taking care of me this time. Just call me Sister Fang." Fang Hua smiled. "Also, I don't dare be called taking care of you. I was just wondering how come I saw her Hong. Turns out he is your assistant now. Scared me to death. With his care, you definitely won't need me." These series of words expressed to him a lot of things, but at the same time didn't say anything. The person who thought too much would definitely find it ugly to hear, but the person who didn't think much would only hear the words on the surface. Thus Bai Lang remained calm. He only smiled and replied, "It's all thanks to Brother Joe's care. Brother Hong's help is my good luck." Since Hong Hong and Fang Hua were acquainted, there was no point hiding anything from her. Fang Hua's eyes flashed with surprise, but it quickly passed. It seems like all the new people in the company have such bright futures. Mr. Bai's drama is becoming more and more popular. As the vice president, I feel as though I can retire early to enjoy my life. Sister Fang is too polite. Mr. Rong is the one who is the most talented, Bai Lang replied. At the same time, the photographer on the set cried out loudly, "Not good." Once again, the sweater in one set of clothing had been designated a 15-minute shoot, but Rong Siki had already used up 40 minutes. A helpless expression floated onto Fang Hua's face. "Do you really mean that, or are you only trying to comfort me?" Bai Lang waited until people's notice had been transferred to the photographer. At this time Rong Siki's expression was slightly pale. On his forehead there was some sweat. Underneath the strong lights, the set was really somewhat hot. Seeing the dried sweat on his hairline, the dissatisfied photographer asked people to come and fix Rong Siki's makeup. Once Rong Siki stepped off the set, his originally frozen expression indeed showed some obvious frustration. His lips were pressed together tightly in an annoyed line. Thus Fang Hua said goodbye to the man, hurried over to help him adjust his emotions. In order to save time, at this time they switched to Bai Lang to film. At this time the photographer was sighing and his face was filled with impatience. The him of 10 years ago probably would have felt some emotional pressure, but the Bai Lang of right now had some confidence. In his previous life, Bai Lang only had one movie role, which was Sunset. The rest were all TV roles. The reason for this was mostly because of Bai Lang's bad fortune, but the other reason was because Bai Lang had been enlightened very late. As for the reason that Bai Lang had finally been able to break through and progress his acting ability from TV standard to a new level, was because of the MV he had filmed just prior to his role in Sunset. Bai Lang had learned a lot from the older actor Ju Quan of that MV. From on-screen presence to how to utilize light and shadows, Ju Quan had pretty much retaught Bai Lang everything from the beginning once again. The reason was because he said he had never met anyone as unlucky as Bai Lang. Most people, if they weren't going to be famous, never got famous. Someone like Bai Lang, who got famous twice but was then dragged down again, was really among the few that was extremely misfortunate. And Ju Quan was always reminding Bai Lang that good actors were able to immerse themselves in their roles. However, after immersing, then you would have many brimming emotions that you wanted to express. However, if you couldn't convey it to your audience, then it was just wasted. Other than emotions, the ability to show and express was the most important part of an actor's ability. Of course, there was another school of thought, and that was that when an actor was truly immersed, then his every action and movement would permeate with the requisite qualities of the role. Ju Quan also agreed with this, but he told Bai Lang to wait until he had been acting until he was 60 years old to use this technique. So Ju Quan told Bai Lang he needed to discipline himself. He needed to turn off the movie sound and subtitles and look purely at the actors' expressions and movements. He had to watch how they expressed themselves and use their facial and body language to show what they wanted. This was completely like returning to a very old school form of acting. When he first started doing this, Bai Lang pretty much fell asleep every time. However, if he watched it once and didn't understand, then he could watch it twice, 3 times. Once he watched it more, then without the interruption of the plot and sound, Bai Lang really came to experience it. The pictures that Ju Quan picked for him were all classics from a past age. Every movement of the actor's head and every blink of an eye had its own meaning. The more Bai Lang looked, the more he understood how to suitably express things. And when Bai Lang finally understood things to this level, Ju Quan then sent him to get familiar with himself. Just like learning to dance, seeing someone else doing it may appear easy and understandable, but when doing it oneself it was a completely different matter. One's movements in the beginning would be ugly and unable to be looked at, however one could only practice repeatedly. Acting in a movie was also this way. Some people looked as though they simply threw their hands to one side in a cool manner, and raised their eyebrows carelessly. However, Ju Quan wanted Bai Lang to practice all these things. And not only in his mind, but in real life to show the effect on different mediums and angles. This was similar to many famous actors who taped their performances so they could carefully review it over and over again. In Ju Quan's opinion, all grand and moving performances came from the actor's own self-reflection. The fortunate thing was, Ju Quan really felt that Bai Lang had natural talent in terms of acting. So in his early days, even though his knowledge ability was shallow, when doing those kind of easy-to-please roles, his natural talent was able to ameliorate his defects. However, if hard work and discipline was added on top of that natural talent, then Bai Lang's performance would be even more dazzling. As for the reborn Bai Lang, he didn't forget these things. How he was before he died was how Bai Lang was now. The difference was that in this life, he had more time to experience more opportunities. Ju Quan had given Bai Lang his enlightenment and really opened Bai Lang's eyes as to what the art of acting was. Right now he was supposed to be a sunny and open young person. Bai Lang sat down on the only prop, which was a chair, and sat astride while hugging the back of the chair. The sound of ka-cha quickly filled the room. After spending only 10 minutes, Bai Lang had successfully completed the shoot for the first set of clothes. After it was finished, the Fang Hua, who had come to the side to watch, unexpectedly gave a compliment. Your performance was not bad. However, the easy atmosphere of the set quickly changed when Rong Siki's second, then third attempt became very charged. The photographer yelled God knows how many times, and his face fell so heavily that Uni's team leader ran to discuss things with Fang Hua. Bai Lang also followed them. Bai Lang knew that it wasn't appropriate for him to open his mouth in this situation, but if he was able to help Rong Siki, then perhaps Fang Hua would stand on his side. Anyway, if it didn't work out and even he got replaced, then there was still Cho Jin's promise of if it falls through, then I'll just find you a bigger endorsement, wasn't there? So after Bai Lang silently listened to a bout of discussion, he finally opened his mouth. How about I switch roles with Mr. Rong? Bai Lang waited until there was a pause in the discussion to interject this sentence. Fang Hua glanced at him in an unexpected manner. As for Uni's team leader, she was a woman called Lin Chin. Lin Chin looked at him in an impatient manner. What did you say? It's not a simple matter of changing the clothes. There is a lot of behind-the-scenes planning and design. There's a lot of things at stake. How can you say change and just change? Bai Lang maintained his gentle tone of voice. I know it is a big production, however, if after the change the effect is better, trying it is easier than changing the model. Also, the fact that the company asked me to film with Mr. Rong, there must have been other considerations and agreements. If you just simply change him out, what about the initial agreement? Right? Double quotation mark. Lin Chen heard this and felt unhappy. She laughed coldly. It seems like Mr. Bai has a very high opinion of himself. Since it's like this, then why don't you tell me just how we should change things? Bai Lang completely ignored Lin Qin's animosity. He smiled and said, let Mr. Rong try on my outfit. Although he might not look as sunny, however he can definitely demonstrate the youthful aspect without any problem. Mr. Rong is serious when it comes to music and his hard work won't lose to anyone. This kind of hard work, when combined with his age and his pure-hearted dedication, it's not unfitting for the image. At this point Fang Hua seemed to gain some interest. She asked, then what about your part? The fact that I was called here is because the company looked well upon my image and partners. Bai Lang gave Fang Hua a grateful glance. He continued to say, so in contrast I can portray someone who is stylish and has urban elegance, but at the same time is working hard. Although the outside may appear bright, but it is because of one's own hard work. This isn't an opposition and will more display a down-to-earth realistic image. Fang Hua frowned. After speaking this much, Bai Lang paused slightly. In terms of the concept, I can be Mr. Rong's older brother. An older brother is like a father. This can connect to my image and partners. It will make the images more emotional. Right now in the clips we've shot, there haven't been any with us together. This seems a little bit too simple. If we change the setting, then the clip will have more of a story and can allow two brothers to be placed together. An experienced actor needed to know more than a little about directing. Right now Bai Lang could see in his mind's eye how the images would look as well as how to adjust them. After Bai Lang finished speaking, even Lin Qin's face changed a lot. After all, the last sentence he had spoken really spoke to the crux of the matter they had just been discussing. Right now the process of the shoot was like this. First they would select the people, then consider their performance. This was the normal process of things. With this in mind, the concept people reached a difficulty. Although both Rong Siki and Bai Lang both had their good points when it came to shoot, however they were unable to find a story with which to connect them together. Because Bai Lang looked taller than Rong Siki. A simply dressed sunny youth standing next to a shorter, elegant city man. No matter what, this image seemed strange. Thus because of this, the images were shot separately and they didn't have any scenes where they put these two people together. However, if they followed Bai Lang's recommendations, then this difficulty could be overcome. However, it was not as though in the beginning they had never considered something like what Bai Lang was proposing. These two people exchanged glances. According to the news that they'd gathered, Rong Siki's circumstances was something they had rarely encountered. Tien, as in his lack of facial expression. But seeing as it was a newly rising young star, they thought they could overcome it. As for Bai Lang, according to the reports, he was a newcomer who was not very good at getting into his role. Thus they could only give him a role which was not too different from his actual personality. They felt that Bai Lang's experience was too far away from urban elegance. Right now if one of them was lacking, then at least the other was okay. However, if they switched, what if both couldn't be used, and then their problems would become even larger? However, according to Bai Lang's words just now, he didn't seem as though he matched the reports about him. Li Qing quickly adjusted her emotions and said decisively, "Okay, let's try it the way you proposed. But the premise being that you're able to hold down the new role. Otherwise I'll definitely change you out." Bai Lang smiled. "If you don't try, how will you know?" At the end of the day, the most successful photograph was that of Bai Lang and Rong Siki together. In the photograph, Bai Lang was wearing a dark purple sweater. He was lying lazily on the couch. He had just thrown aside a suit jacket which was casually draped on the back of the chair. It was clear he had just finished work. On the floor beside the couch, there sat the frowning Rong Siki. He was wearing a cream-colored sweater and jeans. His legs were crossed and he stared fixedly at the assorted musical instruments strewn around the floor. Bai Lang was the older brother. He looked slightly helplessly at his younger brother. He was reaching out to straighten a few strands of Rong Siki's shiny hair, as though trying to remind his younger brother to talk to him. The image was filled with warmth and tenderness, and immediately made one's heart feel warm. As for the real circumstances of the shoot, it was not much different. When the day's work was wrapped up, it was not only the crew that had become more intimate with Bai Lang, even Fang Hua brought Rong Siki to come to thank him. Not only because of Bai Lang's changing of the concept, but in the following shoot, Bai Lang was like a senior and helped Rong Siki with many things. Even though Rong Siki had a cold personality, however he let down his guard slightly and said sincerely, "Brother Lang, thank you." Bai Lang lightly and jokingly rubbed Rong Siki's head. "Today I took advantage of you, and you still want to thank me?" Tien, referring to the fact that he got to pat RSQ's head. Rong Siki didn't duck away. Instead he gave a genuine smile. "In the future you'll still be my brother Lang." Bai Lang stilled. He thought about the brilliant Rong Siki of the future. At that time they had no relationship. Bai Lang suddenly thought that his previous thinking had been too narrow-minded. A new life. A new friendship. So many opportunities to treasure. Why should he be shackled down by the past? Chapter 8. By the time they left the shoot, it was already 10 p.m. in the evening. It was long past the scheduled shooting time. However, since the result was worth it, everyone bore their tiredness. Hong Hong brought the car over to pick him up. "I've moved everything over already. Tomorrow I'll take care of the rent for your old place." In the afternoon while Bai Lang was working, Hong Hong had asked him for the key to his home and helped him move over to the new place without any delay. All of it. Even the things in the fridge. Bai Lang was sitting in the back seat. Hong Hong turned the steering wheel. "Yes. Is there anything else that needs to be done?" "No." Bai Lang thought about it. "Are you hungry? Do you want to have supper?" As it was the first day with a new assistant, Bai Lang, this small boss, ought to have taken him out to eat. Hong Hong paused for a long time before replying, "Okay." It looked like he was actually unwilling, but because of the future needs of working together, he had agreed. Bai Lang smiled a little. However, he told Hong Hong to take him to the new house that Cho Chiem had given him. Once they arrived, the previously cold and luxurious living room was now filled with boxes. It was lucky that Bai Lang's old apartment came with furniture, otherwise if he had to move it all over it would really be a big headache. Bai Lang asked Hong Hong to sit and went to the fridge to confirm that Hong Hong had indeed moved all the contents over. After busying himself for 10 minutes, Bai Lang brought out 2 steaming hot tomato egg noodles from the kitchen. From the pale gold broth a fragrant steam wafted out. There was also egg flour and a few pieces of tomato. It looked both light and delicious. "It's just tomato egg noodle soup. See if it's to your liking." Bai Lang put down the bowl and called his guest over. Hong Hong's expression was a little bit strange. Since Bai Lang had gone to busy himself in the kitchen, he hadn't given any opinions. Now he took the pair of chopsticks and started to directly eat. Since his second mouthful, su su su, the sound of slurping echoed in the room. Bai Lang felt satisfied in his heart and so slowly began to eat his own bowl. In his past life, Bai Lang only discovered about his heart problem a few months before death. At that time the impact on Bai Lang had been quite heavy. Probably it was for this reason that Bai Lang lost his head and agreed to Kang Jian's request to come out of the closet in such a manner. After all, he didn't have long in the world, so there was no point dragging it out. But even so, Bai Lang had also thought about taking care of himself well. The doctor had told him have a regular lifestyle and a healthy diet. Bai Lang had also spent some time researching it. It just so happened to be that on the cooking program 2 years prior, Bai Lang had been given a chance to see many stars cooking, and in order to achieve a good effect for the show, Bai Lang had also spent a lot of time researching cooking and recipes. As he cooked more and more, Bai Lang developed an interest in it. After his rebirth, Bai Lang still didn't like to eat things cooked from outside. He liked to get fresh ingredients to make things himself. It was more to his taste as well as being more healthy. Tonight, when inviting Hong Hong to eat, Bai Lang had some vague notions of gleaning his friendship. However, he didn't hold out too much expectation. Perhaps now his body had affixed with a brand, however he was still himself. As time went on, if they were meant to be friends, then they would still be friends. After today's shoot, Bai Lang really felt as though he could think about things in a more relaxed and open manner. As for dinner, Bai Lang also took his opportunity to give Hong Hong an introduction. He told him about the schedules and contacts that Xi Yang had arranged for him and compared it with Hong Hong's. After all, the switch had been quite sudden. It was at this time that Hong Hong brought up the fact that during today's filming, that Bai Lang's phone had rung quite a few times. Around half were from Xi Yang. Hong Hong saw it and directly answered it. He simply said that Xi Yang was unlikely to call again to make a fuss over his job again. As for why and how, Bai Lang looked at Hong Hong's calm expression and decided it was probably better not to ask for the reason. When the noodles had not even been half finished, Cho Chien opened the door and came in. When he saw the 2 people sitting there eating hot noodles, he looked quite envious. Supper. So good. Cho Chien came to the dining room and draped himself over the back of Hong Hong's chair. Bai Lang looked over at him. "I saved some? If you want to eat, I can make you a bowl." "Hang on second." Cho Chien paused, then asked curiously, "Did you make this?" Bai Lang drank some soup and nodded. Hong Hong had just been loudly slurping his soup. This sound was clearly enjoying the food very much. Cho Chien couldn't help but feel his mouth water. "This isn't right, Ba. Isn't it me that should eat first? This is my house and it's my bowl. Isn't this my noodle?" Hong Hong glanced over at Cho Chien, then suddenly stood up and in one breath finished his bowl and placed it down. "Thank you for your hospitality. It was delicious." Bai Lang smiled. This was what a cook liked to hear the most. "Go home and rest early. See you tomorrow." Hong Hong didn't delay. He also didn't ask Cho Chien for his opinion. After saying goodbye, he left decisively. Only Cho Chien was left in the dining room. After he finished staring at Hong Hong, he narrowed his eyes at Bai Lang. "How come you treat her Hong so well? Do forget it's a buyout." Buyout. Tien, as in he's the exclusive buyer, purchased the whole thing. No one else can share. Bai Lang was still holding his bowl to drink soup. "I even left an extra egg for you. Do you want to eat or not?" "I want to." Cho Chien sat down at the dining table like a lord at his manor. 5 minutes later, Bai Lang brought out another bowl. Since he was so quick, it can be estimated that he wasn't lying when he said he had pre-prepared it. Cho Chien felt slightly appeased. Following that, he copied Hong Hong and was soon slurping loudly. Bai Lang looked at him sideways and continued eating his own noodles. Of course, after one was full and satiated, other desires would arise. After eating his supper, Cho Chien didn't delay to press Bai Lang down to do it a few times. After Bai Lang was once again done until he fell into an unconscious sleep, he prayed in his heart that this was just because he knew that Cho Jin's interest was so high. Otherwise, if every day was like this, then he really needed to think about if he could clutch on to his small life. However, on Cho Jin's side, after his bout of exercise, he lit a cigarette and in his heart several thoughts was circulating. This was the third day after Bai Lang had come to his door, so Cho Chien had arranged for people to investigate regarding Bai Lang's experiences and behavior these past 2 years. The report had recently been sent to his hand. However, the things in the report completely didn't match up with the things that Cho Chien had experienced personally these last 3 days. It was as though Bai Lang had completely changed his personality. He was no longer innocent and stubborn, but had changed to become capable of tolerance and endurance. Also, there had been Fang Hua's unexpected phone call. Cho Chien, what's going on with you and Bai Lang? He's being kept by you. What, doesn't it look like it? Are you being serious? 2 years ago didn't he reject you? What kind of methods did you use? Heh, you're wrong this time. He needed money. I gave him money. It's that simple. He needs money. What kind of money? What's the reason for you asking for many questions? Okay, fine, don't tell me. But I have to tell you, once you break up, tell me immediately. I'll take him off your hands. Take him off my hands. Fuck, you also want to keep my ass, you bastard. Not everyone is like you. I think he's not simple and has real ability. If he's ruined by you, then it would be a pity. Real ability. Him? Cho Chien looked at the report in his hand. Who? Told you. I saw it with my own eyes. Don't interfere with his professional career and don't ruin his name. You hear me? This time have a good relationship followed by a harmonious breakup, okay? I only bed willing partners. Which time hasn't it been a harmonious breakup? I can already tell you have no sincerity. Okay, I know now. What do you know? You changed his assistant. Now change me to be his manager. And then let's see how things turn out. Are you serious? You think I have time to joke around with you? I'm busy to death. I'm hanging up now. Now even the things that Fang Hua was saying didn't match the report at all. Cho Chien felt like there was something not quite right, but he didn't have anything to go on. He looked at Bai Lang, who was curled up in the sheets. His white skin was contrasted and made even more pale by the dark suede bedsheets. His long eyelashes left a shadow on his face. Even when asleep, he had a tired expression. He was lying on his side and gently breathing, completely with his guard down. Cho Jin's lingered on Bai Lang's smooth shoulder, followed by his collarbone and neck. Thinking about the warmth of their bodies moving together earlier, Bai Lang's obedient cooperation, Cho Chien snuffed out his cigarette, trying to suppress a sudden urge. He lowered his head and once again bit Bai Lang's neck. The smooth skin had a youthful elasticity. Cho Chien couldn't help but use a little bit more force. He was pleased when he saw Bai Lang frown slightly in his sleep. Little white rabbit, what are your motives really? In the following week, what made Bai Lang the most surprised was that his manager changed persons. In his previous life, Bai Lang was only given a stable manager once partners became famous. Before that, because most of his activities were training classes and only had partners as his one job, so having an assistant was enough. And the first manager that Total Entertainment assigned him was a person called Chen Song. He had been working for around 8 years. His experiences were not deep but not shallow either. For someone like Bai Lang, who was only just becoming famous, he can be considered an appropriate choice. However, this time Chen Song had not been working for more than a few weeks before he was suddenly changed to Fang Hua. When Bai Lang heard this news, he initially didn't know whether to feel happy or sad. Of course, Fang Hua had a lot more resources, but it also meant that from now on the butterfly effect will become greater and greater. He could no longer rely on the knowledge he had from his previous life, and the changes will become greater. But since Bai Lang had already decided that this was a new life with new opportunities, then he could only do his best to grasp them as they came. This time Bai Lang had at least 10 years of experience in the industry. With that, he should be able to at least reduce the number of detours on his path. Also, after Fang Hua became his manager, Bai Lang also unexpectedly gained a little brother, Rong Siki. This was because of Yuni's design. In the end, they decided to go with Bai Lang's suggestion. After that day, a more detailed short film outline was created and the concept of the roles became more gradually refined. The new version compared to the old version was so much better that other people who had differing opinions shut their mouths. Thus, in the coming days, Bai Lang became busy filming Yuni's advertisement. In this time, he also had to take on the role of Rong Siki's acting tutor. It's just that even though his days were filled with satisfaction, the ghost of the past still refused to fade away. A few days later, very early in the morning, Bai Lang was in the shower. The previous night Cho Chien had continued his regular practice of not letting Bai Lang go until he was completely exhausted, and so Cho Chien as per usual was lying lazily in bed, half awake and half asleep. At this time the mobile phone that Bai Lang placed by the bedside table started ringing. 1 ring, 2 rings until the 6th ring. The digital music penetrated Cho Jin's ears and woke him up. However, Cho Jin's first movement was as usual to stuff his ears with the pillow, not willing to let go of his dream state. Unexpectedly, the mobile phone, which went silent after the 7th ring, once again started a new round of ringing. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. It was continuing to ring. Cho Chien finally lost his temper. He reached out and grabbed Bai Lang's phone. Without opening his eyes, he connected the call. Hello. Other than anger, his voice also had a deep and nasally sound. The person on the other end was shocked and there was a moment of silence. Then he said, I'm looking for Bai Lang. Can I ask if he's there? He's taking a shower. What do you want? Cho Chien heard the sound of the water running. He spoke impatiently with his eyes still closed. Shower. The man on the other end's voice was both confused and questioning. And can I ask you are you an idiot? Shouldn't you say your name first? Cho Chien immediately starting swearing. Hasn't anyone taught you before? The Cho Chien who had not opened his eyes of course had not looked at the name displayed on the screen. Sorry, I'm Kang Jian. He knows me. Then I'll call again another time. Sorry for disrupting you. After he spoke he didn't wait for Cho Jin's reply and immediately hung up the phone. This hanging up actually woke Cho Chien up for real. What the hell, so early in the morning? Impatient, Cho Chien opened his eyes and squinted down at the screen. He saw the missed calls notification showing up on the screen. Who the hell was Kang Jian? Never heard of him. Because he was unfamiliar with how to work the phone, he wasn't sure what he pressed, but somehow the missed calls history popped up on the screen. Kang Jian. Kang Jian. Kang Jian. Kang Jian. 7 calls in total, all in the last 5 days. All missed calls from Kang Jian. Cho Chien frowned. His eyes, which originally could barely open, quickly became very clear. When Bai Lang came out of the shower in a towel, he saw a cigarette dangling out of Cho Jin's mouth while the other person was currently impolitely playing with his phone. He didn't have the hint of guilt or any appearance of wanting to hide the fact that he was invading someone else's privacy. Seeing that Bai Lang looked slightly speechless, Cho Chien unexpectedly decided to provide an explanation for once. Just before someone called, Kang Jian called you. I picked up. Bai Lang stilled. He thought, it's like this, then continued to dry his hair with the towel. Oh. Why don't you pick up his calls? Cho Chien flicked the phone. Is he an ex-boyfriend? Chapter 9. Bai Lang paused for a moment, then said, he's not my friend. Of course Cho Chien didn't miss Bai Lang's pause. Not my friend can have a lot of meanings. Lover. Enemy. Random bystander. Bai Lang didn't reply but instead asked a question of his own. What did you talk about? It was unknown whether or not he was trying to evade the question. Bai Lang turned and walked to the dressing table on the far side of the room and seemed to be looking for something. Cho Chien stared at Bai Lang not much. Hanged up after asking for his name. Why, are you scared of my saying the wrong thing? I've been stabbed by him before, in the back. You should be careful. Bai Lang found the hairdryer. He sat down dressing table and began to blow dry his hair. Who? A loud sound filled the room. Stabbed? Cho Chien frowned. This was another thing that the report hadn't mentioned. What kind of being stabbed? According to the report, other than being scammed 2 years ago, Bai Lang's life had been mostly unremarkable. As for his relationship with Kang Jian, it was completely not in the report. This report was definitely defective. In a deadly manner, I almost lost my life. Bai Lang's voice floated vaguely over the loud sound of the hairdryer. This kind of answer was clearly being deliberately vague. Cho Chien felt dissatisfied. Be more specific. But Bai Lang's only answer was the loud hum of the hairdryer and his expressionless profile. This made Cho Chien think of the time Bai Lang had gone back to T-City. At that time, sitting in his car, Bai Lang also had this kind of face. It was equally empty, completely devoid of any emotion. Cho Chien frowned. He looked down at the phone number again. This Kang Jian is really thick-skinned. He can still act as though nothing ever happened. Isn't that more frightening? Bai Lang continued to dry his hair. Do you need me to help you? Cho Chien threw away the phone. There was a loud, ka-cha sound. The loud and noisy sound in the room suddenly ceased, plunging it back into silence. Bai Lang had finished drying his hair. He switched off the electricity and at the same time spoke, very clearly. I can do it myself. Pretty cool. Cho Chien narrowed his eyes. It was clear he wasn't in a good mood. But you're not allowed to think about other men. Come here. After their exchange, Cho Chien often commanded Bai Lang in this way, as though he wanted to remind Bai Lang about their relationship. Bai Lang turned his head. His expressionless face from before was gone, instead replaced by the look of helplessness that he often wore these days. He still walked over to the bed and without waiting for Cho Chien to make any moves, voluntarily lowered his head and gave the other man a short kiss. However, Cho Chien immediately grabbed the back of his head and deepened the kiss with fervor. Remember, after Cho Chien released Bai Lang's lips, he licked them. Go and change your phone number today. On. Bai Lang suppressed the urge to roll his eyes. Breakfast is bacon omelette. Do you want it? In terms of effort, Bai Lang really had spent a lot on Cho Chien. These days he came 5 days a week. Although he didn't stay the night every time, however he would definitely completely exhaust Bai Lang before leaving. Also the Cho Chien who originally didn't have anything here, now had a towel, pajamas, toothbrush, bowl, chopsticks, slippers and the most evil, an ashtray. A complete set. Cho Chien frowned deeply. How come you always like to cook Western food? How about soy milk and egg pancake one day? I haven't learned how to make those yet. How about you ask Brother Hong to help you buy some? Bai Lang didn't feel guilty at all towards his patron. Cho Chien made a pay noise. Fine, bacon is fine. But don't forget to add spring onions. Bai Lang tried to imagine the flavor. It should be passable. Time he would make maple syrup pancake and see if he still wanted to add spring onion. Today the next thing on the agenda was rushing to set to film the rest of Partners for Life. These days because of the non-availability of the male-led Wu Shenan, the filming had been stopped. The stockpile of previously filmed Partners episodes was dwindling and people were getting nervous. The almost crazy director had already filmed the rest of whatever he could. However, Wu Shenan was the male-led. There weren't many scenes which didn't have him in it. If one wanted to talk about the main plot of Partners, it was primarily about a narrative about the struggles of the newly graduated Lin Quanzai, played by Wu Shenan, after he moved to a big city and started working. Since he had financial constraints, he had no choice but to rent a shared house with other people. A one-level house had been partitioned into 4 separate rooms. They had a shared living room and kitchen. There were both men and women living there. Other than the female-led Wu Zenya and her good friend the supporting female character Chen Meiyu, there was Bai Lang's character Jiang Zhencheng and his son Jiangla. The 5 people lived under one roof. It was a small production about the loves, lives and friendships of people living in an urban city. The first part of the plot was relaxed and comical. Primarily it was about the friction and awkwardness of the 5 people learning to live together. Within it were many jokes and situations often experienced by people living in university dormitories. It resonated a lot with the audience. In the middle, the relationships between the 5 people began to take on a different shape. The male-led and the female-led, after a lot of misunderstandings, began to be attracted to one another. Jiang Zhencheng started to have good feelings towards the female lead's best friend Chen Meiyu, resulting in his son Jiang Li's jealousy and mischief-making. And as per usual according to the rules of a love triangle, the supporting female character Chen Meiyu liked the male-led Lin Quanzai. The latter part of the drama was filled with dog-blooded drama. You like me but I don't like you. You misunderstood me and I refuse to forgive you. After the audience had become attached to these characters, the development of the plot took into account the fervent and passionate discussions and opinions the audience shared on its official website. In this way the plot kept being refined. This was a very popular technique with lengthy dramas lasting longer than 4 months, in order to keep up the freshness of the drama and maintain the attention of its audience. It was at this time in his previous life that Bai Lang's brother's ugly news had been exposed. It made the audience feel poorly about him and so his fame took a plummet. As a result, in the latter half of the plot of Partners, there was a tendency to blacken Bai Lang's character Jiang Zhencheng. This served to compound the bad effect his family scandal had on Bai Lang. However, this time, Bai Li's debt had been pacified by Chojin's check. Then would the following plot of Partners be the same as Bai Lang's previous life? Bai Lang felt quite curious. A few days before, Bai Lang had finally received the script sent by the film crew. The butterfly effect had really taken effect. Under the original plotline, Jiang Zhencheng was secretly jealous of the male-led and had many dislikable scenes. However, under in the new script this part had been lightened significantly. There was more scenes between with Jiang Xincheng and his son Jiang Le added, and after his amnesia Jiang Xincheng still had his son to comfort him. This resulted in a lot more Meng-type scenes. Today what they were filming was precisely the scene where Jiang Xincheng was jealous of Lin Quanzai. The setting was shared house's small living room. The timing was Chen Meiyu's birthday. The 4 people living there made an arrangement to all finish early in order to help Chen Meiyu celebrate. And for this occasion, the script's Jiang Xincheng had put in a lot of effort. He had purchased the present for Chen Meiyu, which was a carefully selected pair of earrings which he thought she would like. However, because Lin Quanzai gave Chen Meiyu a stuffed pair that he had won from a claw machine on the side of the street, the earrings were carelessly thrown aside by Chen Meiyu where it fell into a crack between the cushions. In this way the pair of earrings became a single earring only, and made Jiang Xincheng's present completely worthless. Sorry, Ah Cheng, I didn't meant to The actress who played Chen Meiyu was called Yu Jinjin. She clutched the stuffed teddy bear as she apologized. Her soft and gentle voice would probably have made many men's hearts melt. What should I do? Can the earrings still be retrieved? Jiang Xincheng was kneeling beside the couch. He reached out his hand and tried to feel in between the crack. There was a lot of sweat on his forehead, but in the end he could only suppress his disappointment as he said, "It doesn't seem like it. The crack is too small. It's impossible to get anything out. Why don't we dismantle the couch then?" Lin Quanzai comforted Chen Meiyu. "Isn't the earring the pink pearl that you like? How can you wear it if there's just one?" No. After saying that, he rolled up his sleeves, pushed Jiang Xincheng aside, and looked about to tear the cushions apart. "The sofa is something provided by the landlord. If you break it, how are you going to explain it?" Wu Xinye stepped up logically to stop him. Lin Quanzai completely didn't pay any mind. If we don't tell him, he might not find out. Anyway, how can this old sofa compare with a pair of beautiful pearl earrings? If the landlord asks, we'll just say the 4 of us sat on it until it broke. Right. In the drama, Lin Quanzai was a loyal and passionate youth who wasn't scared of anything. He often butted heads with the coolly rational female lead. At this time Chen Meiyu had already secretly given away her heart. When she saw Lin Quanzai standing by her side, she couldn't tear her beautiful eyes away from him. She said in an emotional manner, "Don't worry about it, brother Shi. The fact that you want to help me already makes me so happy. Really? Even if there's only one earring, to me it will still be a very precious memory." A precious memory of who? The person who gave it to her? Or the memory of Lin Quanzai's help? The completely ignored Jiang Xincheng saw everything happening in front of him. His heart was extremely hurt. He couldn't help but avert his gaze, but when he did, he saw his 5-year-old son Jiangla. The child's dark eyes were quietly staring at him. The two of their eyes met. Jiang Xincheng gave an awkward and forced smile. He raised his hand and wiped off the cream from the side of his son's mouth. "Is it yummy? This cake was selected by your daddy." Jiangla nodded his head. "It's yummy." Afterwards he raised his chubby little hand and took out from his plate a red cherry that Jiang Xincheng had specifically given him. He held out to Jiang Xincheng and said, "Daddy, you eat it." Jiang Xincheng stilled. Then he rubbed Jiangli's head. "This is something I got specially for Lele. You don't like it. I like it. But I want Daddy to eat it." Jiangla stubbornly thrust out the cherry. Jiang Xincheng's expression changed slightly. There was a hint of laughter in there as well as suppressed emotions. Afterwards, Jiang Xincheng bent down. With one bite, he ate the cherry in Jiangli's hand. This was a little bit different from the script, which said Jiang Xincheng took the cherry and ate it. However, the child actor Duo only slightly blinked his eyes and continued his acting. He scooped a piece of cake and ate it himself. Afterwards, other than words "thank you" written down in the script, Jiang Xincheng also picked up his son and cuddled him on his knee. He used his cheek to press against his son's round head and accompanied his son to eat mouthful after mouthful of cake. The 3 camera crews around them were all focused on this pair of father and son. "Cut," the director finally called. Everyone in the crew suddenly seemed to wake up out of a daydream. They started moving again. "Bai Lang, your performance is pretty good." Once the camera stopped rolling, the director Zhou Chun-Kei immediately praised him. "It's as though after resting for a few days you changed to a different person. It's as though you've become enlightened." Bai Lang smiled. At the same time he helped take Duo's plate, and let him slide gently off his leg. When he saw Duo's gaze looking at the half piece of cake still left on the plate, Bai Lang asked the director, "Does the scene pass?" "Of course pass la," the director grinned at him. Bai Lang gave the plate to Duo. "You can eat it all, no problem. Thank you, big brother." Duo opened his eyes wide. He looked at Bai Lang with surprise. The old Bai Lang had the most shallow experience on set, so he was always getting ings. So he was always very low-key and didn't say much. So although the two of them had a lot of scenes together, however outside they rarely talked. However Duo was just a child, so even if he felt surprised, he didn't think much. He took the plate and went to look for his mom to eat the cake together. The director Zhou Chun-Kei came over to Bai Lang. He patted Bai Lang's shoulder and seemed pleased. Recently you've been doing really well. Looks like you've managed to take notice of all the scolding I gave you before. Your movements in front of the camera have improved in leaps and bounds. If you keep this up, then if the scriptwriter wants to add more scenes for you, then I have no objections. If an actor improves during the course of filming, then the hard work usually rests with the director. Since he wanted to continue this beautiful misunderstanding, Bai Lang smiled. He said, "Thank you, director." He hadn't even finished speaking when the Wu Shenan, who was standing nearby, heard these things. He said in mock protest, "Director, don't give up on me just yet. Didn't I push everything aside to rush to film this?" In this way he made it seem as though the only reason to add scenes for Bai Lang was because Wu Shenan didn't have time to film. Zhou Chun-Kei was also an old hat. Of course he went along with what the notoriously proud Wu Shenan said. "I almost felt like kneeling down to beg. What's your company doing? Do they really want all of our lives?" "Ha, I'm doing my best too. Here I am, tired like a dog." Wu Shenan was pleased with the director's words. After all, only popular people were busy. Every day I spent 19-20 hours filming. I've about to sprout pimples on my face. Also, I could hurry to rush back here. Aren't I very professional? Director Zhou, you should be adding my scenes instead, ba? At this time the actress for the female-led Wu Zenya, Fan Shan, also came closer. She said with a radiant smile, "However, Bai Lang has improved a lot. He saved us a lot of time. Was it because you were encouraged by all the messages left by the fans?" Fan Shan was also a small starlet that can be considered only half famous. She had a clean and cute appearance, which meant, in other words, there was nothing really special about her. Partners was broadcasted at the awkward time between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m., a small production during the time most people were commuting from work. This was the only reason they had picked her as the female-led. However, unexpectedly the drama had good ratings. Among the four main characters, she had the longest experience in the acting industry, so she often spoke as though she were a senior to the others. I wasted a lot of everyone's time. Bai Lang went along with it. "In the future I will be more careful." Fan Shan gave him a friendly smile. She nodded cutely. Although she was older, however, her figure was small and cute, only reaching Bai Lang's shoulder. "Then I feel even more assured. You should know, according to a lot of discussion online, they think the two of us should be a pair. Maybe in the future we will have a lot of scenes together. They think that." Wu Shenan was both shocked and displeased. "Where are you getting your statistics from? How come I didn't see it?" Everyone knew that the rest of the story would be refined in accordance with the fans' tastes. So everyone was very conscious to keep an eye on what was on the online discussion boards. On the normal boards, of course, there's no official statistics, but you definitely haven't been by the fanfiction areas, have you? Fan Shan happily reminded him. In the majority of the fanfiction, me and Jiang and Cheng are a pair. Fanfiction. Even Bai Lang was surprised. Just like Wu Shenan, he had only looked at the plot discussion boards. "Yes. Right now I'm following one of the stories there. Every day there's a small update. It really makes the heart itchy. I really want the scriptwriter to go and contact that person," Fan Shan said in an exaggerated tone. Fan Shan also had an ulterior motive in being interested in all this. It was because she wanted to suppress Chen Meiyu's character. In the relationship between the four people, it was actually Chen Meiyu who was involved in a triangle relationship with the male-led and the supporting male character. It had won a lot of heated discussion among the netizens. In comparison, the female-led Wu Zenya was riding a one-wheel unicycle. She was only involved emotionally with the male-led. Although there were some scenes in the script of fighting between her and Chen Meiyu, however it didn't seem to garner much interest from the fans. So there was much less discussion about it. That's why Fan Shan felt unsettled. Clearly she was the female-led. How come the glory was taken by the supporting female role? If in the script she could also have some kind of relationship with Jiang and Cheng, then everyone's attention would return to her. Unexpectedly Zhou Chun-Kun suddenly laughed mysteriously. "Hee, how do you know we haven't looked for her?" Fan Shan's eyes brightened. Wu Shenan changed color. He looked at Bai Lang and his gaze had animosity. At this time, there was a voice which interrupted them. "Senior brother Ma asked me to bring some snacks and visit you on set." Bai Lang's back went cold and he slowly turned around. It really was Kang Jian. Chapter 10. Kang Jian's appearance was not classically handsome. He was tall with a good body, however, while his nose was straight, his eyes were slightly small and he had an inner double lid. His chin was slightly squarish and his cheekbones prominent. When he was young, among a crowd of handsome male stars, he didn't particularly stand out. However, as he got older, his appearance was more suitable for going down a mature pathway. After he had undergone the styling for his role, he had the image of someone who looked casual and playful on the outside but hid deep emotions on the inside. In this way, Kang Jian became a killer of older women. At this time in his previous life, Bai Lang and Kang Jian were just ordinary friends. Kang Jian took a lot of initiative in this regard. If he wasn't calling to chat, then he was turning up at Bai Lang's door with supper. Afterwards, when the ugly news regarding Bai Lang's family got around, Kang Jian began to contact him less. In contrast, due to the release of his first movie and also Uni's advertisement, Kang Jian's star was on the rise and he became gradually known by the audience. Bai Lang naturally thought the reason for the decrease in contact was because Kang Jian was busy working. It was not until a few years later, when Bai Lang became famous again because of the popularity of who was hosting dinner, that Kang Jian's frequent contact returned. At that time, although Kang Jian could not be considered an A-lister, he frequently acted in small productions as either the male lead or in an important supporting male role. Compared to the popular again Bai Lang, he can be considered around same level of fame. Thus, Kang Jian never tried to hide the fact that he and Bai Lang were old friends. The two of them had different styles, and thus there wasn't much chance of them competing against each other. Occasionally, when they appeared in the supermarket together, they could create some minor news and give the fans a favorable impression of two close male friends being affectionate towards each other. This was also the beginning of the two people's relationship. The change in relationship was also initiated by Kang Jian. Kang Jian was bisexual. He was okay with either men or women. According to what Kang Jian told Bai Lang, he actually preferred men over women. However, the reality of his circumstances, it was difficult for him to find someone good. And Bai Lang was clean and beautiful, his personality was calm and he wasn't the type to quibble over small things. He also knew how to take care of others. After they got to know each other, it wasn't as though Kang Jian didn't have any genuine feelings. However, at that time he was more concerned with his own career. Since Bai Lang had a lot of troublesome news, Kang Jian decided to not pursue him anymore. But when Bai Lang became popular for the second time, Kang Jian's heart began to itch again. Also, by that time, Kang Jian had also familiarized himself with Bai Lang's personality. He was pleased with the fact that Bai Lang was low-key and wasn't the type of person to nag or get jealous. After testing him a few times, he found out that Bai Lang didn't seem to have any prejudice towards homosexuals. So he seized the opportunity when Bai Lang was drunk and sealed the deal with him. Afterwards, Kang Jian spent some time pacifying the shocked Bai Lang. He made long speeches about his long and difficult secret love for the other person. It was only because he really couldn't suppress it any longer that it burst out and he lost control. In movies, this type of infatuated and lovesick male character would often appear. Kang Jian's acting was dripping with emotions. It had to be said that Kang Jian's method was extremely correct. This type of good friend turned lover pathway was extremely effective on the innocent and naive Bai Lang. This way he would be more easily forgiven and accepted. Bai Lang at this time was still bearing the heavy burden of repaying Bai Li's debts. Something like having a relationship was a luxury for him. However, he didn't expect that Kang Jian's promise of love only lasted for 3 years. 3 years of giving him his whole heart only won back that kind of betrayal from Kang Jian. So that's why, after his rebirth, Bai Lang's phone was filled with Kang Jian's missed calls. This by itself wasn't unusual. The fact that he ignored it and did not even return one was the unusual part. But Bai Lang had already made up his mind that in his life he didn't want any type of relationship with Kang Jian. If he maintained a so-called friendship with Kang Jian, perhaps it would be easier to do what Bai Lang had decided to do in this life. Prevent KJ's rise. However, Bai Lang already knew the sensation of betrayal from his past life. He hated it and thus he didn't want to also turn into that kind of person. Also, more importantly, Bai Lang was afraid that in front of Kang Jian he would not be able to hide the feelings of anger and disgust in his heart. Thinking about it now, the last time he had seen Kang Jian in his past life, the other man had still held his hand. He had said, no matter how much the world changed, he would definitely stay beside Bai Lang's side. And now, seeing Kang Jian once again standing in front of his eyes, Bai Lang felt a strong sense of revulsion. Kang Jian was holding 3 big bags of sweet soup and had come to the set to visit someone he knew. That person was of course his senior brother from the same company, Wu Shen'an. The artists under the same management company often did things like this. Other than helping to give face to the person they were visiting, they could use this opportunity to make acquaintances and get close to the crew. Perhaps if the timing was right, they could turn these networks into opportunities for themselves. So it was not the first time Kang Jian had come. He greeted Wu Shen'an and then began passing out the soup to the crew in a familiar manner. Right now there were still several more scenes to film, and so this kind of afternoon tea type event was well received by everyone. Bai Lang overlooked the smile that Kang Jian gave to him and continued chatting with director Zhou. If he left the room now, then he would undoubtedly run into Kang Jian alone. He definitely didn't want that. Fan Shen and Wu Shen'an also didn't leave. After all, the topic of conversation had just turned to the direction of the script. The male and female lead were justifiably very anxious about it. And even the actress for Chen Mei Yu, Yu Jinjin, also came to join them. These people surrounded director Zhou and sat on the long work table to drink sweet bean soup and continue their previous topic of discussion. Director Zhou, are you being serious? You guys really went to find that fanfiction writer? Fan Shan asked curiously. On its official website, other than Partners' official discussion board, there was also a fanworks section. Even if they didn't do this, such fanworks were bound to pop up for popular dramas. This way they could somewhat regulate it, and only fanworks published on the official website were considered authorized by default. The premise was that it had to promote a healthy and positive image for the drama. Also, the company owned the rights to everything published with its characters, and could prevent serialization or delete things that it found and deemed inappropriate. Of course, these rights were not exercised strenuously. After all, the company didn't have so much free time that they could delete every unauthorized work on the internet. However, since they promoted the news that the works published on the official discussion board's fanworks section had influence over the script, most fans were attracted to posting their works there. It was a good way of concentrating all the works in one place. After Partners had been broadcasting for 2 months, the relationships between the 4 characters gradually became clearer. The fanworks section during this time also began to spring up like mushrooms. Director Zhou's manner towards Fan Shan was equally friendly. It's better to ask Xiaodong than me. He knows scriptwriter Su's intentions better than me. The producer Chen Dongli also didn't make them run around in circles. His lips twitched and he said, "Lie, we did make contact. It turns out she's a female student that's quite young. All her documents are still being kept by her parents for safekeeping. When we came to her door, they nearly took us for scam artists and tried to run us out. Really unexpected." Chen Dongli was a fatty of approximately over 100 kilos. At this time he had already finished every last drop of the sweet soup and still looked unsatisfied. Bai Lang saw this and pushed his portion, which he hadn't touched, towards him. Chen Dongli pretended to reject it a few times, then began drinking it vigorously. The other people were surprised by this behavior. Some were also disdainful. They saw it as Bai Lang trying to suck up. However, using someone else's gift, this method was too low bar. As for Bai Lang, he just really didn't want to eat anything that Kang Jian had brought. He was grateful that someone was willing to take it off his hands. So what's the result? It was Fan Shan asking again. Will you really put me and Jiang's and Cheng together? Chen Dongli didn't answer. Yu Jinjin used her soft and gentle voice to interrupt. I think the probability is low, Sister Shan. What the fans like is precisely Jian's and Cheng's loyalty. If he suddenly changes the person he likes, then he'd be acting out of character. In the drama, her character was very feminine, and she was also like that in real life. Fan Shan felt unhappy. However, on the surface she smiled. That's why it's called the scriptwriter's power. Jin, don't underestimate them. Otherwise, how can Lin Quanzai and I argue to this degree but in the end still end up together? In real life it wouldn't be possible. However, isn't the scriptwriter still able to write it out naturally in just a few sentences? She pinned a big label on Yu Jinjin which read "Looks down on scriptwriters." Yu Jinjin froze slightly. Then she smiled. That's right. It's my lack of experience. Sister Shen is right. But Xinya, hearing you talk like this really breaks my heart. Wu Shen'an called her by the female lead's name, pretending that his heart was really hurt. Isn't this looking at other people's bowls while eating from one's own? Although he was pretending to be in character, really what was trying to point out was Fan Shen's greediness. Fan Shen's expression slightly changed. Then she sighed. This is also what the fans want from me. You don't know, but fans on the website are always asking this question, otherwise why would I be concerned about it? Jiang Xinsheng, you should add oil to ah. The fans want me to pass on this message to you. They're all looking forward to what you can do. Her many years of experience was not for nothing. Fan Shen's technique of using her words to artfully put down others was not bad. However, her last words seemed to be pushing the fire she had raised on herself towards Bai Lang. She also didn't want to fight Wu Shenan in the open. If she pushed out his direct competitor Bai Lang, then she could distract a lot of Wu Shenan's animosity away from her. The previous Bai Lang wouldn't have understood this. But now he couldn't be more clear. He smiled and replied, Sister Fan is so passionate about supporting the fans, it really makes one envious. Actually, I don't really understand these things, so I can only follow what the script says. His reply was extremely calm and neat, but when Fan Shan looked at the smiling Bai Lang in the eyes, she experienced a feeling of embarrassment. Chen Dongli had finished the second bowl of soup. He acted as though he completely didn't understand the exchanges between the four from before and said, These things are still under discussion. That fanfiction writer's age is really too young. Her parents are so very strict. The scriptwriter still wants to observe the trending topics for a while longer and then make a decision. Hearing this reply, Fan Shen had no choice but to drop the subject in disappointment. Of course, Wu Shenan's facial expression was not much better, because it showed that things could still be changed and that the scriptwriter was still thinking about things. Kang Jian finished passing out all the sweet soup. When the discussion had reached a natural pause, he very astutely found an opening and came over to make his greetings. Brother Shen, Director Zhou, Brother Chen, it's so lively over here, Kang Jian said. What are you guys talking about? Let me join in too. Director Zhou laughed and said, We were just talking about how your green bean soup is very good. There's even konjac in it. It's so filling. Kang Jian's eyes lit up and he immediately continued the subject. Yes, Director Zhou. This is purchased from the 100-year-old shop that the program Local Delicacies previously recommended. I saw it and wanted to bring some for everyone to try. I didn't realize that the store doesn't take pre-orders, and you can only go there to line up to buy. Luckily, I got there early and just managed to bring it here in time for afternoon tea. After speaking, Kang Jian brought over a chair for himself in a familiar manner. He placed himself in between Wu Shenan and Director Zhou. Although this moment might look casual and careless, in fact he had directly inserted himself into this small group under the eyes of everyone. Fan Shan smiled. You're very thoughtful. If it were me, I definitely wouldn't line up. In the future, if someone got you as their boyfriend, then they will be really lucky. Kang Jian grinned in an embarrassed manner. Sister Fan, you're laughing at me. The real good boyfriend is definitely my senior brother's character, Lin Quanzai. He's so popular with girls, no one can beat him. I'm not worried. As long as I follow him, I'll definitely be able to find a girlfriend. These words were very safe and at the same time praised Wu Shenan. However, directly following the previous topic of conversation, Wu Shenan felt like it sounded ugly. His face fell. Fan Shen, who also realized this, looked over with a playful expression. She squinted her eyes and didn't reply. Kang Jian laughed a few times and realized no one was going along with him. He also thought it was strange. Instinctively he looked towards the familiar Bai Lang for help. Lang, this is the same green bean soup place I mentioned on the phone to you before. Do you like it? The silent Bai Lang suddenly had his name called. Fan Shan said curiously, Lang? Do you two know each other?